A lot of people seem to think that Japan is all about overtime and poor work-life balance, but that has not at all been the case to me. At least when I was working for Japanese companies, which I did, the amount of overtime that I did was actually near zero. And so I wanted to make this video to share my experience with those companies and hopefully reestablish a little bit the balance, because I see so much negative content out there, and I think that overall a lot of people fall into the same pitfalls. So I'll share exactly what happened to me, how I managed it, and maybe you can learn a couple of things and avoid some of the pitfalls that I believe a lot of people are falling into. So the first company that I worked for was actually Neikaiwa. So very typical in English teaching school. The CEO was a Japanese lady, all the staff was Japanese, and they actually wanted me to teach English. However, I personally didn't like to teach English so much, so I felt more comfortable helping them with the sales. I was helping doing sales support, I was trying to find new students for them, I was doing some teaching as well. And I remember during the interview, they asked me, "Are you comfortable doing overtime?" And I just remember saying no. And they asked me why, and I said, well, look, you will pay me around 7 hours a day, and if I'm not able to finish my work in 7 hours, you probably should fire me instead of allowing me to do overtime. Because, well, yeah, I don't want to do more than what I'm getting paid for, and if I cannot do what you're asking me to do in the amount of time, there's probably some issues. And so that was one thing that I told them. The other thing that I said to them as well was like, hey, look, I just arrived in Japan. I want to have a decent life balance because I'm not sure if I'm going to stay here forever. So while I'm here, I want to be able to also do more things than just work. And their reaction was so, I guess, they were so surprised about my honesty, and I ended up getting the job anyway. And I think what happened is that most of the time when people get asked, are you comfortable doing overtime? They will just say yes, because they just want to make sure they get the job. But here's the thing though. First of all, most people are not okay with overtime. And I genuinely believe that if you have the right attitude and the right mindset when it comes to answering that question, you should really stand your ground and say exactly how you feel about overtime. I told them, like, look, if I have to do overtime, I will. But genuinely speaking, don't expect me to stick around because everyone else is sticking around in the office. Because that's one thing that I heard is like, because there's this peer pressure happening, right? Where if everyone stays in the office after 6, a lot of times you kind of feel bad to leave the first one. But since I positioned myself right away as the guy who doesn't want to do overtime, I was leaving like 6 p.m. sharp and I almost made a joke of it. So I was just owning it, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's not easy to stand out of the crowd, but if you don't want to do something, the least you can do is at least say it. So obviously, again, maybe I'm a bit different when it comes to those things. I just want to share again how I went through this with that first company. The second company that I worked for, which was a Japanese company as well, was a recruitment agency. And there was another thing happening. The recruitment industry, people drink quite a lot. And I tried to quit drinking for the past 5 years. Arriving in Japan, it was super hard to quit drinking. I now finally actually quit drinking for over a year. I literally haven't touched a single drop of alcohol for over a year. But anyway, in recruitment, there's a lot of what they call nomikai, and you have to go drink with your boss and your colleagues in order to bond and what's not. And that tends to also, there's a lot of peer pressure around that. But I remember my first month, I was invited quite often to nomikais and stuff, but I personally didn't want to drink so often. And I just didn't go. And I remember my manager said to me that it was going to be very hard to build relationships with my colleagues if I didn't show up. But I was like, well, if they feel offended by me not showing up to the nomikai, that's on them, right? Like, I generally just want to chill with my wife or with my friends, I don't need to make friends at the workplace, like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I personally always felt very comfortable telling people like, hey, this is a workplace, I'm here to make money and, get quickly to my goals. And I'm not here to hang out or make friends. And so that was one thing. The other thing was the same, actually. A lot of people were working until 7, 8, 9 p.m. And I remember there was this office filled with like 150, 200 people. And every day at 5:55, I was packing my stuff and everyone was staring at me. Like, what is this guy doing? How dare he leave so early? It's just his first month, and how can he do that? And I remember just, again, laughing about it. Like, yeah, guys, it's 6 p.m. I'm out of here. And again, I think what happens very often with people is they just don't have the guts to do that part. But by just doing that, first of all, you're not going to lose your job. And if you do, it tells so much more about the workplace, and you should probably not stay there anyway. But it shows personality. Like, I did build a reputation around myself because I was just doing my own thing. And so the whole stigma around the overtime and the work-life balance can be easily avoided if you just say from the beginning, like, guys, I'm not playing that game. I'm here to be productive. I have a life, and I'm not gonna fall into the peer pressure. Like, you guys want to stay after 6 p.m. Great. That's the thing. I fully respect people who do that. Like, I genuinely don't care. Like, you do you, and I do me, and that's really how I avoided this entire pitfall, I believe. And maybe also because I work in sales is very result driven. And the reality is, like, if you bring in revenue, nobody really cares that much how much hours you put in. But again, the perspective of a manager is that if you are able to pull in so much revenue in 5-6 hours a day, they probably want you to work 10 hours a day. And so there will be many times, situations where you just have to say, no, I just don't want to do it. And I don't think it works that way, that people will just fire you for it. And if they put pressure on you, it's up to you. You have a choice, right? You cave in or you just stand your ground. And again, I'm not judging people for accepting that. I'm just saying that at least my experience with this entire situation has been overall very positive. I did have many arguments as well in those companies, but in the end, nothing really bad or significant. And yeah, work-life balance has been good. I grew faster than I could hope for in my career. I run my own company now, and I think it comes always down to the same thing. I have my own beliefs, and I'm not just gonna cave in because someone tells me that everyone else does. Doesn't mean, I'm disrespectful, but yeah, unless you can give me a very, very deep reason and convince me, and it seems logical to me, not gonna happen. And so I really hope that me sharing my experience can help some people navigate those situations in a easier way, I guess. Because yeah, whenever people talk about Japan being all about overtime and no work-life balance and all this stuff and power harassment, that's not my experience in Japan. I feel very sorry for the people who go through this. I just wanted to make this video and share my experience here in Japan, and hopefully it helps. As always, appreciate the time. I've been now recording for over a month, and it's been quite fun. So keep reaching out to me. I'm trying to be as helpful as possible through those videos. I try to share as much information as possible, but if I'm missing something, please let me know. If you don't agree with what I say, please let me know. I'm pretty open-minded, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. So cheers.